One's life begins to change when their desires transform into concrete actions. You're listening to the Desire to Be podcast, where your desires for your life and relationships become your mastery. I'm your host, Devora Goldberg, and thank you for joining. Welcome to the Desire to Be podcast. I'm back today with part 2 interview with Rivky Boyarsky. Rivky, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back.
There was so much that we unpacked last episode, and there's so much more that I want my audience to hear from you. So here we are. To recap for my audience a little bit about Rivky, if you don't know her yet, she's a proud Lubavitcher woman, wife and mother to 5 children. She's a nurse, a midwife, a Kallah teacher, and a speaker. I did ask her if she sleeps. I haven't gotten a clear answer on that yet. As a healthcare professional, she is well-versed in halachic as well. Her area of passion is in the areas that intersect with each other. And as a champion for women's Torah and women's health, Rivky travels the U.S. delivering community education workshops. You can also find her on her popular podcast platform, Bodies and Souls. Okay, Rivky, let's hop right in. So to recap from last episode, we were talking about women's health, starting off with the fundamentals really as children, starting off really young. We don't just like one day wake up as an adult and we're like, oh, we're healthy in mind and soul. And as a midwife and as women's support, you clearly guide women in this area. Give us some essentials, kind of as a recap or anything else you'd like to add, but some essentials that you think that we need to give our daughters when we're raising them to be healthy in mind and soul.
I love that you just did this whole, as a midwife, as women's support, because that's exactly what a midwife is. We're here to support women in their own growth, development, and health journey. And I think that's really beautiful that you just did that kind of mindlessly. I don't think you realized how you did that, but that was really, really good. First message we need to give our children, and this is really across the genders, like not just girls, but boys as well, is we need to give them fundamental knowledge. So we need to give them a sense of autonomy over their bodies. We need to give them the language to talk about their bodies. And we need to give them a sense of positivity about their bodies, meaning Hashem gave you this beautiful, wonderful vessel. We need to take care of it. We don't have to punish it, and we don't have to make it look a certain way, but we have to nourish it. We need to utilize it properly. We need to care for it, and we need to understand it. And that's something that we should be doing from a very, very, very young age. And a lot of that really starts in the adults in the lives of the children. And obviously you don't have control about all the adults that are in your children's lives. And when I speak to teens and moms, I always say, you can't control the bubby who walks in and pinches your kid's, stomach and goes, a little bit too much cookies, right? You can't do that, but you can set very clear boundaries about what's okay and what's not okay to talk about. We don't talk about people's bodies. We talk about their souls. We talk about their personalities. We connect to them. Our bodies are a vehicle that we take care of. And that's really what it is. Now, from a young age, obviously, we need to empower our children where it's appropriate to talk and how to talk about their bodies. So teaching a 3-year-old how to wash their own private parts, and teaching a 10-year-old how to take care of their hygiene, and giving them the autonomy to do that is a big, big part of that. Sometimes it makes me very sad when a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old walks in and they don't know what is happening in their body, and that they've birthed children. They've changed children. They've taken care of many, many pediatric visits, and they've done all the stuff that they need to do. And they just don't even have the language and the ability to care for themselves. And so I think a big part of what the narrative in our community has shifted to is empowering our children. Now, I want to say, as someone who also very firmly believes that there's a Torah perspective in everything we're talking about, I do want to say that we don't have to be crass about it. There's an adela way to talk about these type of subjects. And I think a lot of times the younger people, we're still trying to find that balance, because sometimes like the younger people, when I speak to them, they're like, no, I want my kid to know everything. I want them to be able to talk about everything. And I want them to have the language and see, and I'm going to buy the books that and like, there's a balance here that I see that we don't actually have found. And Torah is not a shameful religion. Like Judaism is not here to like shame us about our body. The Torah speaks openly about taking care of your body and nourishing your body, and it's an important part of who we are as Yidden. And so we have to teach our children an edel way to speak about these things, but we absolutely do need to speak about them, both from a safety perspective and a healthcare perspective. We must be talking about these things. So that's a big part is just the language. And that's going to look different house to house. And I'm not here to be your mashpia and I'm not here to be your rug, but I'm saying like consult with whoever your spiritual guidance is about how to go about doing that so that you're doing that in a way that's really Torah aligned. The second thing that I want to
But I'm
say,
curious on that. If I can just nitpick for a second, why do you need to speak to a Torah authority to be able to speak words of physiology? Because I hear so many times that people are like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to say those words. I know the education system will tell them. We'll teach girls about their periods. I don't know if we're teaching our boys about their changing bodies. And there's so much of like, they'll find out one day. And I want to be in the realm of, like you said, Adel. I don't want to use these words, so I'm not going to put words to it. And I'll skirt the issue.
so I'm absolutely not saying to skirt the issue. I'm saying that there's a way to talk about it. Your kids need to have body names for their body parts. What those names are, Tyra has names for all of your body parts because Tyra speaks about everything that has to do with a person, including their physical body. It's a vessel to godliness. It's a holy thing. And so there is a way to speak about it. And I think that what happens is that sometimes because we just don't have access to that because no one spoke to us about it. So then you go to the other extreme where you're like, let's just use whatever language is out there in the secular world. And at the end of the day, we're not secular people. We're Jewish people. And we do need to be firmly aligned in Torah. And that's the balance of what I'm talking about. Don't skirt the issue. But we always have to always remember that we are first Yidden, and there's no place that Torah isn't. Torah is in our bedroom, Torah is in our bathroom, Torah is when we get dressed, when we eat, when we talk, when we have fun, when we do all of our things, Torah is there, including this. The second thing that is very, very important, and I actually see a whole lot of this in our society in specific, is there is a sense that there's one body type that is healthier than other body types, and we all strive to be that one body type. And I want to really empower women, and this is something I do when I go into classes of all ages, whether it's I'm talking to the mothers, whether I'm talking to the community, whether I'm talking to post-seminary girls who are dating, whether I'm talking to sixth graders, it makes no difference. I always talk about body positivity because Hashem gave us a body. We were not created on a factory setting. We were all supposed to look different. You could spend your whole life playing a game of whack-a-mole that you need to be a size 2 to be successful and to be healthy, and it has to say a certain number on the scale, and maybe all your sisters are skinny and you're not, and but skinny does not equal healthy, and skinny does not equal taking care of yourself, and skinny does not equal that you won't get disease processes. What we need to do is we need to talk to our children about the things we're adding. We're adding joyful movement. We're accessing the power of our body. We're understanding that our body is going to look differently at different stages of our lives. We understand that there are certain foods that are going to nourish us and not just feel good in the moment, but they're going to nourish us in the long run, and we're going to feel good after we're done eating them. We understand that if we sleep properly and we drink enough and we take care of ourselves, we're going to feel good in this body for a very, very long time so we could serve Hashem to the fullness of our abilities. And that's a conversation that we really need to have. So that goes back to that bubby who walks in and says a comment, and you're like, look, in our family, we really just don't talk about bodies. Bodies are a vessel. We're going to nourish them. We're going to take care of them. We're going to joyfully utilize them, and we're going to access the power in them. But we're not talking about one body over the other one. And another place that you could do this is not just with family members and not within your core family, but also at your doctor. If your doctor says to your kid every single time, I need you to go on the scale, and for certain ages, it's definitely necessary because we're giving medicine based on weight, but you could have your kid turn around. We don't have to face the number, so we turn around the other way. But as your kids become teenagers, you can question, you just took a weight. Do you really need a weight right now? Like, is there a medical indication? And you could do that for yourself as well. Like, a lot of times it's just protocol. Like, they're doing it because they're doing it, but the science doesn't actually back up doing that. So it's not the same thing as a blood pressure. If you've taken your weight and your weight's been stable and you have no medical indication, it might be something that you can opt out of.
Yeah. And what I love about what you're saying is that this is conversation that comes up with our children at all stages, both genders. And as long as our kids are comfortable with the fact that we brought it up and we've put language to it, then they can come up to us and say, I'm uncomfortable about this, or what is this? Once we've opened up the door for conversation, then it continues more. So I love that. Now, I know that some women first meet you when they first become brides, when they become a Kallah. What are the ways that you teach Kallahs and you help them?
So I actually love that stage. I feel like there's so much growth and self-exploration into who they are and what they're becoming. I love teaching colors. It's one of my absolute favorite things to do.
What do you
Um,
love about it?
what do I love about it? First of all, I love Taras Mishpacha. I think it's one of the most beautiful things. I love the mikvah. I love everything that has to do with it. It's connecting to the divine in a way that is so deeply soulful. And you're accessing godliness in your marriage on a consistent basis. And that's crazy to me that we have that power. And sometimes we look at Taras Mishpacha like it's a burden that I have to check through every single month. And really, it's not a burden. It's this wonderful, amazing, godly connection that you get to access every single day of your life as a married woman. And that's mind blowing to me. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, if any of my audience members don't know what Taras Mishpacha is, can you give a little synopsis?
So Taras Mishpacha are the laws that govern a Jewish marriage. It's the interactions between a husband and a wife within herself, within the framework of a Jewish marriage. And that has to do everything with the process of getting to mikvah, when you enter a state of nida, and when you exit the state of nida, and the process in which going through that. But Taras Mishpacha encompasses all parts of a Jewish marriage, much more than just getting you to mikvah. It's all the interactions that happen between a husband and wife. And I think it's so beautiful.
Agreed.
So I love connecting to the spirituality of that. I love being able to educate women in the spiritual and the physical components of it. A lot of times I also meet Kallahs in my role as a Badekas, so a Kallah struggling with whatever it is on a practical level, getting to her mikvah, consummating her marriage, or any of the bedroom related stuff, or she's struggling with mikvah, and then she'll come see me and we will do an appointment where there's a whole lot of education. Sometimes there's an examination. Obviously, I'm firmly wearing my midwife hat at that point, but I do love being able to make this mitzvah joyful, because sometimes they have a wonderful Kallah teacher and they're coming to me because there's a physical component that needs to be addressed in relation. So the fact that I'm able to like kind of straddle those worlds of the medical world and the halachic world, it brings me tremendous joy to really watch them de-stress as we work through the details. So I think that it's really a beautiful thing to be part of.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you have your feet in both worlds, because as women, when we learn the laws of family purity and we're entering this new stage and we're understanding more about our physiology that has to do with checking ourselves after our period, getting ready for the mikvah. There's so many questions over the years that come up. You can't properly educate yourself entirely before your wedding. So it's a continuous learning process. The Desire to Be podcast is taking sponsors for upcoming episodes. If you have a business that you'd like to advertise, if you have a product that you'd like to advertise, this is the platform to do it on. It will reach all my audience members, giving you lots of great exposure. Or maybe you just want to sponsor an upcoming show and support the Desire to Be podcast. If you're interested in sponsorship or advertising, reach out to me on either LinkedIn or on Instagram. You'll find me under my name, Devorah Goldberg. Thank you again for listening. Yeah, I hear a lot from women who are embarrassed to go to the rabbi to ask the question because he's the one who gives the ultimate answer, yay or nay, or has to understand more about it. Sometimes people feel more comfortable sending their husbands to speak to the rabbi. But someone recently mentioned to me that we as women really need to have a relationship with the rabbi and should have one rabbi who we go to so they understand us, they understand our every component, either about our marriage, relationship, et cetera, where we're coming from, our background. And that's something that wasn't taught to me years ago. So that was fascinating to me that we're encouraging the relationship. It's a professional relationship with a rabbi. There's nothing embarrassing about a question. There's nothing embarrassing about a color that exits our bodies. But tell us your perspective.
So I love that. I love that you just brought that up because it's something I was discussing yesterday with a Kallah who came in and she's like, I don't understand why, like it makes me so uncomfortable that I have to send in these questions. Like I feel like it doesn't make sense. I'm showing it to a man. I've never spoken to a man other than my husband or someone related to me, and now I'm showing my intimate things to a man. And I said, you have to remember that a Rav is not just a man. A Rav is a professional. When you come in here and I do an exam as a midwife and I'm doing an exam, to me, your vagina is the same as a hand, as a nose, as a mouth. Like to me, it's just a body part.
Mhm.
I see them all day long. It's totally professional. I totally understand that there is an emotional component to you, which is why I'm going to be super sensitive and I give trauma-informed care and you're the center of my care at all times. But at the end of the day, from me, I'm not going to remember what I saw. It means nothing what I saw. It's the same as me shaking your hand. Like it doesn't make
Mhm.
any difference. And that's the understanding when you're going to go into any medical provider that whatever they're seeing, yes, it might be uncomfortable, but to them, it's professional. And they're looking at it as like there's a checklist in their head. Like I'm looking for this component, for that component. Is this okay? Is that okay? And you're just getting things done. It's almost like when you go get a wax, right? So you're getting a wax in areas that might be covered usually, but it's professional, right? There's nothing personal here. A rough is very much like a medical professional, he's your spiritual professional. And so that means that when he's looking at it, he's looking at it from obviously a spiritual lens, but much in the same way as a medical provider would be looking. What do I need to check off? What are the questions that are going to follow up on this? What are the components that I'm looking for in this Shyla? And it's totally like not even like emotional at all. To the extent that I actually told her this story is that there was a Rav who was approached by a woman and she was heading towards his house to drop off a Shiloh. And she saw him on the street. So she said, can I give you the envelope now? And whatever. She assumed he would answer later. As she started walking away and he said, wait, I'll give you the answer now. And he opened the envelope and he took it out and he looked at it in the middle of the street and she was mortified. And she's like, okay, obviously he felt bad afterwards. He realized, but the point was that to him, it was a tissue. Like he was like, what's the big deal? Like, I'll just tell you the answer here. Why should you wait the 2, 3 hours of anxiety and stress? And I'll just give you the answer. Because for him, it was just fact. There was no emotional undertone. There was no subtext.
Mhm.
Afterwards, he felt bad and he explained to her this. But in that moment, he was like, okay, I'm going to de-stress you. Like, I'm not going to let you sit there for 3, 4 hours until I get home, until I look through my shilas. Let me just give you the answer now. Because for him, it was purely professional. So I think that sometimes we have to remember that Hashem is, like I said, with our bodies, God is part of all parts of us. Like Judaism isn't separating the physical from the spiritual. Judaism is the mixing, the complete connection between the physicality and the spirituality. And therefore there is spirituality in every single physical component of us. And the spirituality is what the Rav is addressing in those physical components. Maybe for us, we're looking at it as a physical thing, but to the Rub, it's a spiritual question, and therefore the answer is spiritual, and it doesn't have all this subtext that we tend to give it.
Yeah. And just to give a little more context for my listeners, in case someone's not familiar with the word Shyla or Badika. So when a woman has her period, 5 days minimal, and then she waits the subsequent 7 clean days, what we call when she does not have any sign of period, we do an internal checking every single day with a white cloth. And if there's a color on the cloth which looks it might be the period, we have to speak to the rabbi and see, is this color okay or not? And interestingly enough, I also heard recently that we really have to give context to the rabbi. It's not just like we give the rabbi the cloth and say, is this okay or not? Tell him what else is happening. Did you have an examination earlier that week? Are you having stress in your life? What are the other areas around it? And I think, Rifki, this goes back to what you were saying originally when we have this conversation with our kids, understanding our bodies and having language around what's going on. Speak to them like a professional. Tell them what's going on in your life. Speak physiology, and that will carry weight when the rabbi is giving you the answer, whether that color is okay or it's not okay.
So giving our kids the knowledge and the ability to understand their body and connect to their body is very, very important to being able to keep the laws that are related to a Jewish marriage. If you're doing internal checks and you don't know where you're doing it, that's a big stress for a Kallah, right? So they have to know what is where and where is what, so that they can
Mhm.
then actually just keep halacha on a basic level. The more comfortable they are, the more enjoyable the bedroom is. And that's a big part of Judaism, is connecting. Again, we go back to connecting the physicality with the spiritual. The physical enjoyment is a spiritual enjoyment. It's all part and parcel of what a Jewish marriage is. These things are all connected again and again and again and again, because that's really how we live our lives as Torah Jews, is that everything physical has a spiritual component.
Absolutely. I want to talk about your hat that you wear as a midwife. Tell us what inspired you to go into midwifery.
Okay, it's a good question. My first degree is in education. I have a degree in education. I was teaching high school when I got married. I got pregnant and I had a very, very, very hard pregnancy. I mean, all my pregnancies are hard, but now we know why. That at that point we did it for 7 months. I was in and out of the hospital, more in than out. And when I came out, my husband would come home and he would find me like passed out on the floor, and then we would go back, and it would be like this back and forth. They drew my blood. They thought I had cancer. It was a little bit crazy. And I don't watch Gaisha movies, and I don't read a whole lot of Gaisha books unless it's very specific to learning or
Mhm.
improvement. And I had nothing to read and I had nothing to do. So for fun, because really I'm just a big nerd, I took the nursing entrance exam. I scored extremely high and I got offers to come back to school. And I did that because I was still, on modified bed rest for the rest of the pregnancy. And I was like, okay, this will give me something to do. And so I did that and I actually loved it. The eventual goal was, okay, then I'm going to go be a midwife. I'll do 1 year of nursing. But I actually really, really love nursing so much. I love the hospice, especially. I know that sounds weird
Mhm.
for like a midwife, but birth and death are actually the exact same spiritual energy. It's really a very powerful spiritual moment.
Tell us a
And
bit about that. I know we're
just
diverging a bit, but what do you mean by that?
okay. So when a neshama enters into this world, there's a spiritual energy in the room. It cannot be matched. And I will tell you that you feel differently in different births. And there's a absolute spiritual energy that enters the room by a Jewish birth. There's no other way to say it. There is a holiness and a godliness. And the more in tune the couple is to that, and the more the birth is a spiritual event, the more the people in the room feel it. I remember there was a new nurse in a room with this, they were so cute, this Hasidic couple. It was their first baby. He was so excited, but he wasn't involved. And the nurse kept saying, he's not involved. He's not involved. She had moved from Kansas and she was like, he's not involved. What's wrong with him? What's wrong with these people? And then he was behind the curtain and she was pushing. And as soon as he heard the baby, he was so excited. And he made a shehecheyanu, and she left that birth and she was like, that was the most beautiful birth I was ever in. And I was
Mm.
like, you spent the whole time complaining. She's like, there was so much spirituality. It was so beautiful. And there really is. And I will say that in a Jewish end of life, there's the exact same spiritual energy. There's a stillness in the room. I don't know how to explain it. If you're not there, you don't know it.
Yep.
It's kind of
I've
like,
experienced that. You're absolutely
yeah,
right.
there's a movement in the room, like a spiritual movement in the room that mimics very similar to when a life enters the world.
Mm.
It's not there when it's not a Jew. I don't know, like I've sat with a lot of dead and dying patients
Mm.
at the end of their lives, and there's just something really holy in that room at that moment. And it's really beautiful. And
Mm.
I know maybe for people listening that might sound a little funny, but birth and death are really transitions that very much mimic each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about pregnancy and women who grow their babies within them, they birth the babies, they nurture the babies as an infant with their bodies. What do you say we need to do to maintain our dignity, our self care, and self nourishment throughout this process?
I'm gonna go back to Tyra again because I really think all the answers are right there. Like I think we just have to access it and harness it and learn it. I think that the Tyra gives us a fairly good blueprint of how to keep our dignity and maintain our dignity and take care of ourselves. And the Tyra way of life really, really does support this. And if we even look in the responsibilities that husbands who have Yir Shemayim and have husbands who are in touch with the importance of the role of having children, of the mitzvah of pruruvu, and the mitzvah that's being done, they will naturally fall into this role of supporting this wonderful and amazing mitzvah that they get to be part of in this very real way. I think also one of the things that does come to mind is also the time period after birth, where after birth you have this prolonged nida status. And I tell, women, it's really the hardest. I think it's the hardest nida time, because emotionally all you want is that one hug. You just want that one hug.
Mm-hmm.
And it's long. It's not 12 days. It's 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks sometimes, and it's the back and the forth, and you're physically like drained, and in that moment your husband has to dig deep. He needs to dig real deep, and you have to dig real deep to find the spaces for him to support you, and for him to be there for you, and for you to continue to be able to keep harchakas, which are the laws that separate a husband and a wife during the time. In a large way, it's our love letter to Hashem in this moment. It's our love letter to Hashem, that Hashem, this makes no sense to me. It really doesn't, but I know that this will nourish my marriage in a way that is beyond my logic. And I think in those moments where we're pushing ourselves and we're trying and we're connecting to the power of what we're doing, I think that a lot of couples find yes, it's a struggle, but yes, they also find a space where they are forced to dig deep in a way that will in the long term really benefit
Mm-hmm.
the marriage and the relationship. But as a Jewish woman and as a Jewish community, I think also largely due to the fact that we really do place a tremendous value on children. We do nourish mothers, and we do nourish, people who are having babies, from small things. Like, you have a baby and your 4-year-old is going to come home with a big poster from the whole class that they're all excited that, Shua's mommy had a baby, right? And all the neighbors are coming by and they're bringing you cookies and cake and breakfast and lunch and dinner, and everyone's surrounding a new mother. I think that's tremendously nourishing. The village wakes up when someone has a baby. The village wakes up when someone has a loss, chas v'shalom. The village wakes up around these life moments of pregnancy and around these moments of family growth, and there's tremendous value to that as a mother. I know a lot of women who in the world at large, they struggle because the world is very fragmented. And so if you live in a community that doesn't value having children, when you have a child, sometimes you feel like you're all alone in this like incessant loop of diapers, feeding, cleaning, bathing. Maybe not bathing you, maybe just the baby, but like again and again and again and again, and you feel drained and you feel empty and you feel like there's no one else but you and the baby. And in our community, that really isn't the focus. The focus is supporting a new mom or supporting a mom who chas v'shalom had the opposite, a loss, right? So we all gather around women who are pregnant and just had a baby. And I think that that's a really, really valuable thing for mothers. Do I think that there's always room for improvement? 100% there's room for improvement. Mm-hmm. One of the things I recently started was a postpartum group. And in our postpartum group, we have 10 to 12 moms who meet every single week for 6 weeks, and they get to meet with all the healthcare professionals in a discussion facilitated by me. So they get to meet a pelvic floor therapist, they get to meet someone who will talk about postpartum nutrition, a parenting coach. I talk about the physical wellness, getting to mikvah, contraception. We get to meet a lactation consultant and a feeding specialist. We get to meet a baby toy specialist. We get to meet a mental health provider. We get to meet all the people that you really need. And these moms, they're coming back week after week with the same moms again and again. And so these moms become friends, and they've created a village for themselves, and they've created a group that continues to meet. And I've gotten pictures, and I create a WhatsApp group. I've gotten pictures a year and a half down the line where they're still meeting at the park. And it's such a beautiful thing, because we do need to create villages. As women, we're not supposed to parent alone. I mean, I don't think men are supposed to parent alone either, but I think that like women are much more, we need the village. And so a lot of times I think that we do have the village around us in a very real way. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that as a community, we really value these things. We value raising families, we value education, we value birth, we value children. And so we do circle around each other around those moments. And I think that that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's incredible that you have this platform for women after they give birth. It was not around when I had my first. And thinking back at that time, yes, you get your meals for the first few weeks, but knowing that there's a platform out there right now where women can come together, be continuously educated, ask their questions in a safe environment with other women who are just like them. Perhaps they're bringing their babies along. So everyone's
They are
in this,
bringing, so we have
right?
childcare. Yeah,
That's
there's breakfast and there's childcare. And I will say one more thing about this group is that actually I'm right now in middle of putting it together so it could be replicated in other communities. And I do have 4 or 5 other communities who have already expressed interest in doing this. And so we are in middle of creating like a training session and a replicable group.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. I love that you're doing that because as many hats as you wear, you can't replicate yourself. So at least other people can be trained in what you do, which is great. You've shown so much inspiration that comes through you to other women, to other people. But who inspires you?
So many people inspire me, all these strong Jewish women who surround me and who we've learned about. I think that the Torah is an inspiration. And I think that if you really look at the people around you, the people who are making change, they're exactly the same as the women 2,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago who
Hmm.
just saw a need and did, in their own little corner, made a change. And sometimes that change became something big enough to write about. And sometimes that change was just women being women and showing
Hmm.
up for other women and showing up authentically and showing up in a Torah aligned way and showing up in a way that, you know, was real. And when I mean by real, I don't mean just like, oh, this is what I feel inside. What I mean is real, meaning connected to their neshama real, aligned with who they truly are real. And I think that that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do 1,000,001 things outside your home. And I don't think that necessarily means that you have to like spearhead a new technique for whatever. It means showing up for the people in your lives in a very real way. And if you feel like you're doing a small change, believe me, every small change has tremendous effects. I really enjoyed that you started off with that I'm a proud mom and a wife. And I think that that's our most important job. And our most important job is no matter what you're doing outside, is that you need to show up first and foremost for your children, for your spouse, for your home, because at the end of the day, the real difference we make is establishing a Jewish home that is really as firmly grounded in health and wellness, and be that physical health or spiritual health, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And you are the perfect person for people to turn to emulate what that balance looks like and to continue asking the questions, to continue exploring more. Cause I hear so much of what you give others is really aligned with this. Now, if I have any audience members who want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
They can reach out to me on social media, on my Instagram account, which is just my name, Rivky Boyarsky. They could reach out to me. Probably too many people have my number, but I'm sure there's some point of connection that someone has my number. They could WhatsApp me.
Instagram is fine. We'll drop the details in the show notes. Rivky, thank you so much for doing this, making the time. You are just full of so much inspiration and golden nuggets for everyone to learn from. Best of luck for everything you'll do in the future. Ah, what a great episode. Thank you for being here. I truly, truly appreciate you. I'd love for you to tap 5 stars and let me know what resonated. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under my name, Devorah Goldberg. That's where I give you more content. That's where we're able to engage even further. Until next episode, stay safe and be well.